Welcome in, everybody, to a nighttime edition of Birds 365, brought to you by BetUS. Tonight, Johnny Mac, how you doing on this Monday? Eagles day 8 of practice, Johnny Mac. We're moving right along here in training camp. How you doing on this Monday evening, sir?
We made it through 50% through of the 4 consecutive practices for the Philadelphia Eagles. So halfway there, halfway home.
Halfway home. What'd you see today, John? Let's get right into it. Well, first, let me welcome everybody in. We got a nighttime edition. We got a good show planned, a full 2-hour show tonight from 6 to 8 p.m. We're going to give you all the rundown on everything. We're going to tell you about our sponsor, BetUS, the newest sponsor to Birds 365. Proud to welcome them onto the network. When the welcome, look, we got a nice chat crew already in here early, just a couple minutes into the show. Mr. Prez, Joe Whip, Torian's in here, Madness is in here. CZ, Rich Nut, we see you. Thank you all for being here. Johnny Mac, hot one today down at NovaCare Complex. What'd you see down there today, man? Just an overall recap of day 8 at practice down there at the NovaCare. What'd you see?
A little bit more even keel defense, making some plays. Big safety by Jordan Davis in a backed up period. You saw a great tackle for loss by Zach Ball, snipping out a misdirection screen with all kinds of that eye candy everybody's looking for. Doesn't always work. Sometimes the defense figures it out, and Zach Ball was able to do that at one point. So you had some good defensive plays. Sean Stevens getting an interception, a pick six, and a backed up period. A good throw by Tanner McKee, though. The ball just hit Will Shipley between the 3 and the 9, and he just dropped it, popped in the air. But good to see the defense getting to the football, making plays a little bit. And then offensively, continued great camp for Devontae Smith, A.J. Brown, which has been a theme. Johnny Wilson showing up with a big play in the red zone that got people excited. Jalen Hurts still hasn't thrown an interception. Did fumble the ball in a ball security drill, so that drew some gas from his teammates, and he quickly recovered it. But, yeah, a little bit better give and take. And Vic Fangio spoke before practice that for everybody was there, they could see it wasn't a great day for the defense. So not surprised that they recovered a little bit with that ebb and flow that Nick Sirianni talks about. That's generally what happens in training camp. And it was good to see them show a little bit of life.
Good stuff there from Johnny Mac. John, we're going to dive into the offense. We're going to dive into the defense. We're even going to talk about the press conferences. We'll start with Vic, and then we'll do the player press conferences a little bit later on. But let's go there now. Let's start with the press conference from Vic Fangio. He spoke this morning before practice. What'd you hear from Vic Fangio? It's always interesting to listen to him speak, Johnny Mac. He is a breath of fresh air. That phrase really does apply to him. I love listening to him.
Well, I think the best answer today was when my buddy Brooks Cabina from The Athletic asked him about what he said last time about his analytics and not even sharing it with his disciples. He kind of asked a follow-up on that about proprietary information, and I believe Vic's answer was he could share why he thought that, and his answer was no, which is pretty much sums up Vic Fangio. And yeah, he's an interesting guy, old school guy, obviously. It's interesting to me. We had a few chuckles. At one point, I'm going to ask Nick if he shares it with him off the record to see if I can get a real answer. But it's interesting the way he handles himself and the way he does his job, and he's going to be up in the booth. So we learned that, which if you followed his trajectory, his history and his career, that's not new for him. He prefers being up in the booth to see the whole field and let the assistants handle the communication part of it. So Yeah, it's going to be interesting with Vic around, which is fun for me.
Yeah, great stuff from Vic Fangio. I thought he had some good points. He spoke again about Bryce Huff, said he's been improving in camp. So good to hear that. And all the other comments are good. I liked what he had to say about the, being up top. It's the best view. And I love what you said this morning where you're like, he doesn't care about any input coming or advice or anything. He's going to call what he wants to call. And that's Vic Fangio for you in a nutshell. So good stuff from Vic Fangio, who spoke this morning. John, let's go to the on-field stuff. We'll start on the offensive side of the football. Let's start with quarterback Jalen Hurts. Evidently, it was another good practice today for Jalen Hurts. John, what did you see from QB1 down there at training camp today for practice number 8?
Well, I think the one thing, and Vic talked about it, the quarterback is taking care of the football. So, I mean, it's been really difficult for the defense to take it away. And part of that is Jalen Hurts going the right places with the football and taking what's there, not trying to overextend himself, which was maybe an issue last season, certainly down the stretch, falling in love with the big play and that type of thing. So it's been all good. He's been very sharp throughout the summer to this point, and that hasn't changed. And that's what you want to see from really good quarterbacks. They're defined by their consistency. Not only week to week, year to year, but day to day. And you see the best example of that is in training camp. And he's had a very consistent training camp, day after day. Just, there's ups and downs, but the ups and downs are great to good instead of great to bad, good to bad, that type of thing. So that's a positive for me.
John, the question about Jalen Hurts, we talked about it a lot in the offseason. Have you learned any more, whether it's good or bad, about the way they're going to use him this year? You remember we talked about it just kind of all offseason. Are they going to turn him into something he's not? Is he going to be a quarterback that's not, accentuating his skill set of being able to run and some of those other things that Jalen brings to the offense? Have you learned any more about what you think they might do? Have they quieted any concerns maybe you might have had about them turning him into something he's not?
Yeah, they have. They're not going to give away, obviously, game plan stuff and that type of thing, but they're working on a lot of what you've seen with the quarterback run game. I've talked about the option wrinkle they brought into it with Saquon Barkley. Bunch of quarterback draws, which has been very effective for this team. So it is one of those cases where after watching the spring, which again is different because it's a passing camp, you very few 11 on 11 periods, no pads, obviously. So, you're just working on the passing game essentially. And he was dumping it over the middle a lot of interceptions, the exact opposite of what's going on now with no interceptions against Jalen Hurts. And it looked like, what are we doing here? And then as you get back to the summer, you're closer. You're not playing real football, but you're a lot closer to real football. And they're playing real football, and they're using both aspects of a skill set, which is what everybody says. Kellen Moore's a good coach, and that's what good coaches do. They build around the strengths of their best players, and Kellen seems to be doing that.
You saw some videos around on social media this week that a lot of fans are reacting to with Jalen Hurts kind of sprinting. There was one play where he rolled out and had a running play, and then there was another video of him kind of racing up the field next to Dallas Goedert. From the video perspective, it looked like Jalen was fully healthy. His wheels were completely back. Have you seen that as well, John, throughout practices, that he looks healthy? He looks 100% when he's out there on the field.
Yeah, the explosion's back. I've been talking about that since pretty much day one of camp. He looks like the juice is back from that aspect, from the running part of it, which he didn't look like that last season, even before the knee injury. from week 1 in New England, a lot of people were asking, what's going on with Jalen? He doesn't seem the same.
Right.
And maybe, he had consecutive ankle injuries, not last year, but the 2 years prior, and he had minor surgeries, but nonetheless, and maybe it took a little bit more out of him than the Eagles and he himself was letting on, because he's never going to admit he's hurt. But yeah, completely different guy this summer so far. So that's a very positive development, because he looks like the Jalen Hurts, of a couple years ago, who's really explosive on top of what he can do with the power aspect of the running game.
Yeah, so it'll be interesting to watch how he's progressing, during the year. I think he's gonna have a big year this year, and obviously, if the legs are a part of it, it'll be interesting to see how Kellen works it in to his offense, where he spreads the ball around a lot. So we'll be watching that. John, the other question on Jalen Hurts would be, what have you seen in the non-football stuff? I know you weren't a fan of the leadership talk, and I understand your perspective on it, but have you seen anything different out of Jalen Hurts this training camp compared to ones in the past that you've covered? Is he talking more? Is he vocal? Is there anything else that you're seeing from him on the sidelines, out on the field with other players that maybe you haven't in the past?
He likes to tool around on Dom's golf cart
Yeah,
now,
yeah,
having a little bit of fun with that. But no, he's the same guy. He's always been the same guy. He's the same guy when they were winning 29 of 32. The same guy when they were losing. Yeah, that's why I don't put a lot of stock in that kind of stuff. I mean, the Eagles talked about, people need, when things don't go right, people need someone to blame or something to blame. In the NFL, we see that with the Eagles, Brian Johnson, Sean Desai, Matt Patricia. Back in Doug Peterson's years, first it was Mike Rowe, then it was Press Taylor, and people need somebody to blame. And some people blame the quarterback. And the leadership wasn't like, I always bring up Jason and Fletcher, because it's not two better leaders from that standpoint in the NFL, and they were both there and they couldn't figure it out. So, what does it mean? What does it mean versus producing on the football field, executing on the football field? Like, give me a bunch of great players who don't like each other, and I'll take my chances against leaders. To put it bluntly.
No, I hear you. It's a good point. I mean, I appreciate the perspective, because it's not everybody's, and I think it's a point that's well taken. So I appreciate that, John. Anything else from Jalen Hurts? Not just today, but through the first 8 practices, through the first half of training camp here. Anything else that you're seeing from Jalen Hurts that we haven't talked about or that we haven't discussed today? Just that you're seeing from QB1 as we're a couple weeks in the training camp here.
No, I mean, we talk about the quarterback ad nauseum from day to day. I mean, that's the nature of being an NFL starting quarterback and a top tier NFL starting quarterback. So the microscope is always on him. He knows it. He's well aware of it. And, he understands what was said about him last year. He knows it. Same guy. Because he's taught that from your guy, Nick Saban. He doesn't, I think there's this narrative that he doesn't hear it. He hears it, but he's one of the best at ignoring it. And he's the same guy. And I don't think that's ever changing. And I don't necessarily think that's a bad thing.
That's what I was about to say. I don't think that's a bad thing at all. It's a guy we watched lead us to the Super Bowl and come within a couple plays of potentially beating Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid, the latest NFL dynasty, as you can call them nowadays, with their 3 Super Bowl rings. So, it worked, and we know it worked, and we saw it with our own eyes. So, no doubt about it. John, let's continue on the offensive side of the ball. Good breakdown on Jalen Hurts there. Let's go to Devontae Smith, John. I'm hearing more. I know he's always been good. I know he's never been a question. It's not like I heard reports that he was bad ever, but I'm just hearing more. I'm seeing more about him. There's more reporters talking about him. Jalen Hurts talked about him. A.J. Brown talked about him. What have you seen from Devontae Smith in camp so far, and specifically today?
Yeah, I've called Devontae and AJ boring because they're so
They're so
good
damn good. Yeah.
from day in and day out. When I was talking about the quarterbacks and consistency, the same thing for any position, really. They're so good, you just take them for granted. In the case of Devontae, he's getting better and better. Today it was a slot against poor Reed Blankenship. Talk about a mismatch, safety against Devontae Smith. So if you can create that against other teams, you'll be cooking pretty well, I would say. So, yeah, I mean, he's just really good. It was interesting. Aaron Moorhead, the wide receivers coach, talked about him a little bit and said, and there is room to grow. There's still room to grow, and specifically brought up, his size, and he is undersized. And I think we all forget that now because it hasn't mattered that much. But both Devontae and Aaron said there are things left on the field. He's got to get better with technique, and he's got to understand people are going to try to get their hands on him at all times and take advantage of maybe the one aspect he doesn't have, which is that imposing physical nature. So he's not perfect, but he's damn good. I'll say that. And he's been having a great camp.
Good stuff from Devontae Smith. Excited to see what kind of season he has this year, John. I think it's a big year coming for Devontae Smith. He's already coming off 2 back-to-back 1,000-yard years after nearly getting 1,000 in his rookie campaign. I think he has a big year this year, Johnny Mac. One of my projections coming into the season. John, let's talk A.J. Brown. What'd you see from A.J. Brown, wide receiver 1 today?
Well, AJ's better than Devontae.
Yeah.
So, I mean, yeah, that's the best football player on the Eagles. And he's been that way basically since he's gotten here. So I always do that, best pure, but who does their job the best? And that's how I define the players when I rate the players. It's not impact, because impact, the quarterback always has the biggest impact, whether you have good, bad, or indifferent.
Right.
Bad quarterback has the most impact on his team.
Yeah, impact is a sliding scale based on your position.
Exactly. So who does their job the best is how I define the best players. When you see all these lists of best players, that's the way I do it. Obviously, a lot of people disagree because, they rate the quarterbacks near the top, and some belong there, some don't. But as far as who does their job the best on the Philadelphia Eagles, AJ is he's number 2. Number 1 is Director of Joy, Reggie, the team dog. He does his job the best. Number 2 is A.J. Brown. He does his job the best. He does. He's the best player on the Philadelphia Eagles.
Good to have A.J. Brown here. Good to know he's having another good camp. Obviously, I don't think anybody was concerned about that. Johnny Mac, let's talk Dallas Goedert now, moving over to the tight end. I'm excited for what Dallas Goedert could be this year in this Kellen Moore offense, John. I don't, people were ripping me again because this morning I said, I don't think he's overrated.
If they don't like what you said.
Yeah. I mean, it's not that I think he's overrated from a talent perspective, but his top campaign ever is 830 yards. I mean, that's
can't
not
get caught up in the numbers. Can't get caught up. Look,
I know, but from the perspective of talking about a top
team,
5 tight end, he hasn't played like a top 5 tight end in Philly. Maybe he is talent wise.
Yeah, yes. Top 5. Yeah, yes. I think, and again, I think a lot of it depends on traffic. And look, when you have a 1,400-yard receiver and 1,100-yard receiver, you're not going to be a 1,000-yard receiver. So if he was in a more tight end centric offense like Baltimore, he'd
Yeah,
get
but that
that.
factors into being a top 5 tight end. I know it's
Well,
not
people's
Dallas Goedert's
minds,
fault, but it's the
not
same reason
not
Devontae Smith's not a wide receiver 1.
not not in the eyes of the people that matter, his teammates, the coaches, the Eagles, what they're looking for. Um, you know, his position coach, Jason Michael, just spoke today, as a matter of fact, to us. And he just speaks in awe of Dallas Goedert. There's very few tight ends who can do both aspects of the job. That old school tight ends, guys who can play inline, can be meaningful receivers. It's a really small list, really small. And he's probably number 2 on that list behind George Kittle.
Yeah.
As far as all around tight ends. And then the receiving aspect, part of it is he's got to stay healthy. He hasn't played a full season in a while because he gets banged up. They haven't been drastic, 4 or 5 game injuries. You remember the broken glenoid bone in Chicago, which wasn't his fault. Now last year, sometimes he plays too physical for his own good, and he's trying to, stiff arm somebody and he breaks his forearm and he's out. So, I mean, yeah, if you're worried about stats, he's probably not going to be top 5. If you're worried about overall impact on the game, he's right there on the cusp of 5. If he's not 5, he's probably 6, maybe he's 4. Depending on what you're looking for. Some of these tight ends, there's 3 clear tight ends, and Kittle, Kelsey, Andrews. Is he in that group? Probably not. Maybe Sam Laporta's, if you want a receiver, a healthy TJ Hawkinson. But he's right in that group. He's a really, really good player.
Anyway, I think he's going to have a good year this year. What did you see from him today and just throughout training camp so far? But start with today. What did you see from Dallas Goedert today?
Well, he was a monster at the open practice at Lincoln Financial Field.
3 tutties, yeah.
Yeah, you're not going to follow that up every
No,
practice. It just happened to work out that way. But yeah, I mean, he's one of those guys who CJ Gardner-Johnson matched up with him in one-on-one, and CJ had to leave afterwards. Made a great play, actually breaking up a pass, but wasn't a huge day impact play-wise for Dallas. But yeah, again, I mean, it's practice. It was one of those guys. Like if you put a list of Eagles to worry about, he's very low on that list. You don't even think about Dallas Goedert.
Yeah, other than the injury aspect, I would agree for sure.
Yeah, he's very low on the list. And hearing Jason Michael talk about him, his physicality is, he said it drips down in the room as a whole, and just the standard he plays. Yeah, he's a guy who, if anything, is underrated because, fantasy football numbers. Which again, I mean,
I don't even play fantasy, so.
But I'm saying the number. It's like you. And Nick has said this 100 times, and I've said it probably 1,000 times. And there's one football. I don't know. You can't expect 1,500 yards, 1,200 yards from the receivers, 1,000 yards from the tight end, 1,700 from the running back.
Yeah, it doesn't add up.
It's not realistic. Yes, it doesn't add up.
You think Dallas Goedert has a career year this year?
In what metric?
Any of his metrics. His top yardage is 830. I think his top touchdowns is well under 10. You think he has a career year?
I think he has. I think he plays his consistent self in film work. I think the Eagles will be very happy at what he provides.
Yeah, but that's not my question, John. I know you think he's going to be the player. I get that. Do you think he has more production this year?
If he plays 17 games, but he hasn't played a full season since his rookie season when he was a part-time player. So, I mean, yeah, part of it's health. It's interesting. In 2021, he probably would have gotten 1,000 yards if he was healthy for the entire season. And then some may shut up about that, but he didn't. The big thing is last year he was less of an impactful yards after catch guy, because I think the offense was bogged down and unimaginative and stale, self-proclaimed stale. They need to get him back in catching the football in positions to where he can get those yards after catch. I do
agree. And that's
expect
part of
him.
what I mean. I think Kellen's going to be great at getting him in the right positions and using his skill set the right way.
I do expect him to get more touchdowns than he typically does because he's never gotten a big touchdown number. And I think Kellen's already shown in one practice at Lincoln Financial Field he's more willing to use the tight end in the red zone. So, I think that number is going to go up. And who that impacts, people will probably be upset by that if that's the case, because it'll impact somebody else. But we'll see how that shakes out. If you win games, it doesn't matter, obviously.
Yeah.
But if you don't win games and, a certain someone isn't getting touchdowns because he's getting more touchdowns, that's why you can't worry about that stuff.
Yeah, especially when you have this much talent on the offense. A little bit different when you're working with as many good players as they have. John, let's move into I'm going to get to the offensive line, which a lot of people are waiting to hear about. But let's talk real quick on Saquon Barkley, or Saquon Barkley watch. What'd you see from Saquon down there at day 8 of practice?
Well, it wasn't a great day, but it wasn't his fault. Early on, he got caught for a safety in the backed up period. Jordan Davis just blew through the offensive line, and Jim Brown himself couldn't have gotten away from him. So, looked like it was tough to see from where we're standing. It was, I think it was Mackay getting blown up a little bit on the play. And, Jordan met him two yards in the end zone. He wasn't going anywhere. So that was one of the big impactful plays for the defense. And then the screenplay from Zach Bond that I opened with, that was also at the expense of Saquon. And again, not his fault. It was a misdirection screen. So you had all the bells and whistles that everybody wants to see. And it looked magical, except the linebacker knew exactly what was coming and met Saquon 3 yards in the backfield for a tackle for loss. So, not his fault, but not the best day for him.
John, let's go to that offensive line. Good to, not great, I guess, to hear that from Saquon, but it is what it is. You're not going to have a great day of practice every day at camp. Let's go to that offensive line, Johnny Mac. There's been a lot of moving parts on the offensive line, kind of uncharted territory for us in recent years here in Philly, talking about this much movement on the offensive line, this much potential uncertainty. What'd you see today from the offensive line? Who played? Who was in? Who was out? What was the rotation like? What'd you see from the offensive line?
It was a jumbled mess. First of all,
right.
it seemed like a good sign early because Mekhi Becton was back. He was sick on, I don't even know what day we are. Whatever, Monday. He was sick on Sunday, and he was still listed as limited with the illness. But he did practice. He did do some team reps, but then he tapped out to Brett Toth. More on that later. And Tyler Steen was back, but only in individual drills. So he's getting closer. So that's a positive.
Yeah, that's
And
good
that'll
for
be
him.
interesting. Yeah, he's got to get back because
I was
he's
worried about him being, falling into no man's land there, just not
yeah,
being in
and
the field.
hopefully he'll be back out there tomorrow. We'll see how cautious they are with it. He'll certainly be back, at least doing individuals, I would imagine. So he's getting closer. So Mackay started at right guard. It's interesting. Lane Johnson was not listed on the injury update we're giving, and he worked through individual drills, but he did not participate in team drills. So either he tweaked the toe, he was dealing with a toe issue in individual, or they just gave him sort of a Veterans Day. And we'll get a better indication on that tomorrow morning. I think if they were going to give him a Veterans Day, they wouldn't have made him get in the pads in the 90+ degree heat. So
Right.
we'll see how that shakes out tomorrow. Fred Johnson was the right tackle in place of Lane. And then Cam Jurgens left late in the practice with a trainer, walked inside a little bit early. I'm told it's not serious. We'll get a better indication what he's dealing with. But at that point, Toth had to move over from right guard to center, and then Matt Hennessy took over at right guard. So, yeah, it's been a mishmash. Jason Kelsey was there today, so I thought maybe he'd jump in. Play a
Yeah,
little
really.
center. But that did not happen. Joking. Please don't think he's coming back. So yeah, it's been tough with all the moving parts on the interior of the offensive line specifically. So many different bodies, so many different players, and that's why you see perfect example of that safety I was talking about. Just Jordan destroyed the interior of the offensive line. So they're having some issues there right now.
Good stuff there from Johnny Mack. John, anything else on the offense? We ran through it all. We're going to take a commercial break, come back, and jump into the defense. But anything else on the offense today that we missed? Anything that
Johnny
stood out?
Wilson
Oh,
made a
that's right,
great
Johnny.
play.
Yeah.
It was a great play by Jalen Hurts, a great play by Johnny Wilson as well. And it was interesting that Jalen Hurts put him in a position. So it was a red zone drill, and Jalen put the ball purposefully behind him to keep him away from the defenders. And he was able to reach back and catch the football. Great catch, great throw, great play. So Johnny Wilson making some noise. It's always the big receiver that everybody likes. I'm not buying into he's going to be the third receiver crowd. But if you need a big body in the red zone, he might be able to help. And
Have you seen a little bit more from him though? Because I remember when we first talked about him, you're like, look, he's just not ready. Do you think he's at least ready to, if it's a small role, contribute to the team this year in this season?
Yeah, maybe in a smaller role. Yeah, I mean, if you need, as I said, as a blocker or as a red zone threat, that ran a nice route in one-on-ones to get away from I think it was Ringo, so that was impressive because Kaylee's very athletic, and that's one of the knocks on Johnny, the fact that he's such a big body that maybe can't move as well
Right.
as other receivers, which is true. But yeah, I think he can help in short spurts, and maybe you don't feel as bad about the lack of depth for AJ and Devontae outside the numbers because he's playing a little bit better. But yeah, I wouldn't want to see him play 70 snaps. I'll tell you that. But I think he's got a lot of promise for a 6th-round pick, and he's way outplaying the guy who was picked in the 5th round, who keeps dropping the football. Man, that poor guy has just lost his confidence.
interesting to see what Johnny Wilson does. I'm excited for him. I think he's going to be a good contributor to the team, but we'll see what he ends up doing. We'll click more around on what happened at training camp today. Thanks, everybody, for being here. Good crowd tonight, Johnny Mac, on our nighttime edition of Birds 365. If you're in here and you're enjoying the show, make sure you drop a like. Leave us a comment in the chat. I'm reading as many comments as I can. We appreciate all of you guys for doing that. Hopefully I didn't miss any super chats. No super chats. So if you guys drop a super chat, we will get to that. But let me tell you guys about our newest sponsor here on Birds 365, BetUS. We are proud to welcome BetUS to the network to sponsor Birds 365, to sponsor the National Football Show, and to be a proud partner of JAKIB Sports. So thank you to BetUS. I'm going to give you are you looking for a new sports book this football season, everybody? BetUS is the answer, and JAKIB Sports is proud to announce our football partnership for the upcoming season with BetUS. Right now, receive a 125% sign-up bonus on your first 3 deposits up to $2,000 and up to 200% sign-up bonus on any crypto deposits. If it's good for former Birds quarterback Michael Vick, it's definitely good for JAKIB Sports. So make sure you check out BetUS. I attached and pinned the comment that has the link to BetUS. The description is the link is also in the description. So if you want to check out BetUS, do it now. We'll be right back on Birds 365.
Michael Vick at BetUS.com. Catch an incredible 125% sign-up bonus on your first 3 deposits, plus 10% gambler's insurance. BetUS, my online sports book and casino.
If you missed any of today's show on the JAKIB Media channel, listen to the podcast on your way home. Available on YouTube, Apple, and Spotify.